The Boston Celtics and the NBA were shocked by Gordon Hayward's terrible injury on the opening night of the season. In the aftermath, many journalists and pundits predicted that they would struggle to be a top 5 seed in the East and would be no true threat to make the finals without their marquee free agent. The entire team has bounced back and is currently sitting at 10-2 at the time of making this video. A remarkable position and a reflection on Brad Stevens and his fantastic coaching staff. This video will take a look at Brad Stevens, his incredible coaching record with the Celtics, why he is such a good coach, and examine the idea that he could be the best coach in the NBA this season. This might sound ludicrous to those who support the Spurs and the Golden State Warriors, and I understand, as Popovich and Kerr are some of the best coaches in the league, but it is time to shine a light on a lesser known coaching face in the NBA. And if you had to ask me to pick between Popovich, Kerr and Stevens, I would definitely struggle. This video's sole intention is to just shine a new light and talk about a coach that isn't often put up with those guys. Stevens came to the NBA after the trade of Boston's Big Three and was tasked with managing the organization through the rebuilding period. Many expected the Celtics to tank and try to acquire top-level talent with their draft picks, but Brad had other ideas and consistently turned players who were seen as below average around the league into productive players and ultimately wins for the Celtics. Just take a look at the roster Brad had in his first season with the Celtics. He had the inconsistent Jeff Green, 30 games of Rondo after an ACL, a very young Avery Bradley, Jared Sullinger, Braden Bass, Gerald Wallace, Kelly Olynyk, Chris Humphries, and Phil Pressey as his major rotation players. Plus, he managed to make Jordan Crawford look like a real NBA player for 39 games, before flipping in for some second-round picks from the Warriors. This team looks like a sub-20 win team for me. Has very little shooting, no dribble penetration, very limited defensive players, and no true offensive talent. They won 25 games, which isn't great, but not as bad as expected and resulted in them getting the 6th pick and Marcus Smart. It is the next season where Brad really shone, as he took a pretty average roster to a record of 40-42 and into the first round of the playoffs. He did this all whilst the front office and Danny Ainge pulled off a huge amount of trades as they began to acquire cap space, talent, picks, and eventually Isaiah Thomas. The Boston Celtics in this season played an incredible 22 different players, a huge amount of roster turnover, which makes it difficult for any coach to manage, implement, and operate a solid offensive and defensive system. Only 3 players played over 30 minutes a game, and they were Jeff Green, Rajon Rondo, and Avery Bradley. And Jeff Green was traded after 33 games, and Rondo was traded after only 22. Everybody else played under 30 minutes a game, and Brad Stevens played an incredible 9 players in large amount of games and over 20 minutes per game in those games. He was pulling out lineups, rotations, and plays from his little bag of tricks to maximize the talent on this roster and bring Boston back to the playoffs, where they haven't left since his tenure. Next season was the 2015-2016 season, and the first season where Brad had a stable roster with what looked like actual NBA talent. Avery Bradley had continued to develop under Stevens and was turning into one of the best defenders in the league and taking steps to become a lethal three-point shooter. Isaiah Thomas was inserted into the starting lineup and would remind the NBA that he could seriously play basketball. But perhaps the most impressive thing was Brad's ability to maximize the talent of his lesser players. Evan Turner came to the Celtics as a forgotten second pick in the draft, and the Celtics gave him a shot on a 2-year, $6 million deal. This was his second season with the Celtics, and over his 2 years there, Brad had him largely run the second unit and come off the bench. And he thrived, as he was surrounded by shooters and averaged 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in his 2-year stint with Boston. As a result, Turner would get absolutely paid by the Portland Trail Blazers, to the tune of 4 years, $72 million, and never really play as well with Portland as he did under Stevens in Boston. Another player to really experience this Brad maximization was Jay Crowder. A throw-in in the Rajon Rondo trade with Dallas, he would show he was a capable three-point shooter and an incredibly versatile defender. The Celtics would sign him to a 5-year, $35 million deal, and it was long called one of the best contracts in the NBA. Crowder would eventually be traded to the Cavaliers in the deal that got Boston Kyrie Irving, and in the first parts of this season, he doesn't look to be as effective in Cleveland as he was in Boston. Evan Turner and Jay Crowder are good players, and credit for their development must be given to them for putting in the work. But Brad Stevens demonstrated his phenomenal coaching ability by putting them in situations where they could maximize their ability and shine on the court to the benefit of themselves and the Celtics. This is what we ask coaches to do in the NBA. Find creative ways to extract value from players who most couldn't figure it out with. Popovich has done this year after year, and Tom Thibodeau did it in Chicago with small, off-the-bench point guards in Nate Robinson and DJ Augustine. This draw card is a big reason why Al Horford came to Boston, and the big man and Brad combined to extract every ounce of scoring ability from Isaiah Thomas this past season. Brad gave Isaiah the keys to the Celtics and ran him off screens, gave him dribble handoffs from Al, backdoor cuts, and all kinds of plays to give Thomas space to shoot or attack off of the dribble. Thomas responded, averaging 28.9 points and 5.9 assists per game as he took the Celtics to the conference finals on a remarkable run that included a 52-point performance against the Washington Wizards. It was one of the most amazing runs in the playoffs I've ever seen by a player, especially considering the circumstances. Isaiah is now in Cleveland, and it'll be interesting to see how well he can play in their system. If his production does drop, credit must be given to Brad for knowing how to give his players the best looks and maximize their talents. The last piece of player development I want to talk about with regards to Stevens is his oversight of the development of athletic stud Jaylen Brown. Brown was considered by most to be a big project with a ton of upside when taken number 3 in the draft in 2016. Stevens gave him limited opportunities to start the season and preached that he would earn his minutes through defense. Over the season, he got more and more minutes, and his defense looked solid, but his handles and three-point shooting looked a little bit off. To start this season, Brown has earned starter minutes, is in up to 31 minutes a game compared to his 18 a game last season. He's scoring 15 points a game on 40% shooting from 3, and is one of the most versatile wing defenders in the league, showing great hustle, length, and strength in defending all kinds of players on the court. Brown has a limitless ceiling, and it'll be interesting to watch his development over the course of his career under Brad Stevens. But this season, he has already shown development, and Brad Stevens' management of him is exceptionally good and another reason why he is such a good coach. But Brown is only one part of the incredibly impressive effort by Stevens this season to save the Celtics after the terrible injury to Hayward. Stevens has completely changed the system after Hayward went down, and is playing a completely different brand of basketball to the past 4 seasons with the Celtics. In his first 4 seasons, the Celtics were ranked 17th, 5th, 4th, and 13th in pace, and played an up-tempo style of basketball that involved getting the ball out in transition and draining threes. To start this season, the Celtics are 27th in pace, and playing a much more half-court style of basketball that focuses on limiting possessions, turnovers, and allowing them to set their defense. And they have implemented this to perfection, as Brad and Al Horford have led the number 1 ranked defense in the league and are holding teams to just 94.5 points a game, a remarkable amount in the modern NBA. And Kyrie Irving, one of the league's most criticized defenders, has looked like a real defender under Brad Stevens, putting in effort and getting into the passing lanes. He is still getting smashed by screens in pick and rolls, but he is small and not strong enough to ever be able to defend well against them. But the effort is there, and Brad has obviously taught him a thing or two on this end, and his defensive scheme is hiding Kyrie Irving's weaknesses and creating the best defense in the league. The offense is also playing well, and the Celtics are using ball movement and the 2-man game of Al Horford and Kyrie Irving to create space and open shots for themselves and their teammates. Many questioned whether Irving would be able to fit into Brad Stevens' style of offensive system, but he's shown to be a very willing passer and is whizzing the ball around the court and is catching on for the whole team. Some of the passing highlights have been simply phenomenal, and it shows an incredibly well-coached and disciplined team. Stevens is also using 2 of his rookies as well, with Tatum featuring in a starting role where he's asked to defend, rebound, and shoot within the flow of the offense. And Semi Ojeleye has been asked to play spot minutes and provide spacing in defense, and is doing well in this role, and not playing outside of it, and really understands the defensive schemes. But it is Tatum that has truly shone in his role, scoring 14 points a game on 50% field goal shooting, 53% three-point shooting, and 82% free throw shooting, all whilst pulling in 6 rebounds, averaging 2 assists, and almost 1 steal and 1 block a game. Simply put, he's making Danny Ainge look very smart, and Brad Stevens just as good. And his defense has been especially impressive, as most saw Tatum as a defensive beast who would struggle on defense to begin with in the NBA. He's been hassling players in the passing lanes and using his length to disrupt players in the paint and on the perimeter. The Celtics' start to the season is just further proof of Brad Stevens' amazing coaching ability, his ability to channel whatever talent is on the roster and make it work. Stevens' track record of unlocking lesser players is also at play this year, as he allows Marcus Smart and Terry Rozier to come off the bench and run the offense, defend relentlessly, and push the pace. Both players continue to develop into studs for the Celtics and are further proof of Stevens' amazing balance between playing players to win and develop them over the course of a season. We'll need years to see if Stevens can come close to matching Popovich's long record of winning and championships, but Brad is making a push for Coach of the Year this year as he continues to blow people's expectations and beliefs of what is possible for the Celtics out of the water year after year. A coach of this creativity, people management, basketball knowledge, and ability to maximize wins from his roster is surely one of the best in the league, and I can't wait to see how the rest of this season and Brad Stevens' entire coaching career unfolds. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more NBA videos in the future, and leave a comment on what you think of Brad and the Celtics below.